most important when we are thinking about energy transition. But of course, my expertise is not on that. I will talk a few issues regarding, I would call, the socio-economic challenges in energy transition. The world, good for probably India as a whole, but it may be very costly to eastern states. So if you are thinking that it is going to be costly, there should be some kind of a compensation mechanism. Otherwise, we may not be able to encourage governments and also people to facilitate this transition. So what kind of compensation mechanisms are possible? What kind of compensation mechanisms are desirable? And that's what I'm thinking of spending some time on.
Hybrid gap funding. You mean to say hybrid gap funding? Hybrid gap funding.
I'm talking in general. So I'm talking in general. So in one sense, I think this is coming back to the discussions at the global level. No, at the global level, when you are talking about climate change, what are the crucial negotiations? To some extent, compensation mechanisms. Availability of technology and what kind of money should be paid, what should be the burden on the developed countries and developing countries. And a similar discussion on compensation mechanism may be necessary even within nation when you are talking about transition, energy transition, or even transition to reduce climate change, address climate change. I think people who were thinking about policies in 40 years ago, 60 years ago, at that point of time, some of the eastern states were having a lot of advantages in terms of the coal. No? So I hope some of you may remember that the government of India used a certain kind of policies so that states which did not have coal were not disadvantaged. I think freight equalization policy was in that direction. Of course, over a period of time, you can see those policies disappearing or the importance coming down. And there is earlier the energy price was by and large determined by the governments. No? But now we are moving towards market-determined pricing of the electricity. So, given these kind of tendencies, what may happen is that for energy transitions, eastern state may have to take two important steps. One is to reduce the dependence on coal. I agree that no, it cannot be taken fully at a stretch, but there may have to be a reduction in the dependence on the coal. But there also may be a reduction on the dependence on certain kinds of industries, no, because of the use of intensive energy. Both these going to be very costly to eastern states. What could be a kind of a compensation mechanism? One possibility is like what Amarendra has a lot of expertise in looking at or working with Finance Commission. Finance Commission may have to think about this issue. We have to think about transfer mechanisms within federal transfer systems to see that certain states are adequately compensated to move ahead in terms of energy transition or to address climate change. And that is possible, but even to convince Finance Commission, probably you need to do a lot more studies. I think one mandate of the Center for Policy Research can be to do such studies so that you can support the argument of the state governments to ask for more transfer for this particular purpose. For example, if there is a reduction in the emission of carbon dioxide by Odisha, I'm sure that it is good for Odisha, it is good for India as a whole. When it is good for India as a whole, how much India should transfer to Odisha for taking that particular action? So there can be calculations of that kind, and probably some of these calculations can be useful in that sense. The second point is that we, at the international level, we use carbon credit as a mechanism. It's by and large a market mechanism to compensate. Can we think about market mechanisms of this kind? For example, we know that if there is a new project, I think I can be wrong, you can correct me, if there is a new project which is reducing carbon dioxide emission, that can be brought in under the carbon credit mechanism. But if some state is simply reducing the use of coal or a use of carbon emitting mechanism, will that qualify for getting compensation through the carbon credit? That's something which we may have to think about. So there can also be other strategies. For example, I'm sure that if Odisha or Chhattisgarh is reducing own production of electricity, and if it is depending on the national grid, currently the prices are by and large market determined, and that means now, and actually when you are coming to the renewable, it is just opposite of what was the situation 50 years ago. Probably the eastern states don't have that kind of advantages in terms of the renewable, at least in the given technology. So in one sense, probably energy transition could be a way that by which some states will be in a position to generate lot of rent and income, whereas some other states will be in a position to pay huge amount of money for the electricity prices. So in order to address that inequality, what kind of pricing mechanisms are necessary? Can there be an intervention in pricing mechanism partly justified through this reason? Because now some states are reducing their own dependence for the national benefit as a whole, and for that reason there have to be some kind of a government intervention in pricing policy. Can we think about that kind of a proposition, or can we develop that ultimately? But no, I think I'll take just 2 or 3 more minutes. I think I'm okay with my time.
Yeah, it's 38. We still have another 6.
Oh, okay. Energy transition. Talking about energy transition in India is a problem. I think some of our colleagues have already mentioned, because ultimately it depends on our willingness to pay for energy. Are we willing to pay the true financial cost of energy? That's the one question. But are we willing? Then only we can ask the question: are we willing to pay the true social cost of electricity production? Even today, quite a lot of consumption of electricity is without paying even the financial cost of electricity production. So if the sustainable transition to energy, safe or green energy will happen only with a kind of willingness to pay matching the cost. I would call the social and economic cost. And in that sense, probably my sense is that I have done a lot of work on the willingness to pay of electricity in the different contexts, and my sense is that if these talks about the energy transition remain on paper and not in practicality, there is an objective reason to that. We are still not willing to pay the price of the actual green energy. So is it really possible to think about a scenario where people are not, or substantial section of people are not willing to pay the true cost of electricity, but still, as a country, we need to move towards clean energy. In one sense, I think probably then we have to think about a part of the energy subsidy as a subsidy for transition to energy, cleaner energy. So we need to rephrase or rethink our strategies in that particular direction. So my sense is that technology and policies and projects are very important, but at the same time, how do we encourage different actors to move towards energy transition, or sort of participate in the process of energy transition, depends on a lot more, I would call, finer details on: are people willing to pay, who is bearing the cost, who is willing to compensate for it, and do we have national or an international mechanisms to achieve this transition. Thank you very much.
Now I invite Mr. Bhaskar for Q&A or any suggestion, discussion that you want to have. We had 4 speakers in this session. We had Dr. P. Chandrasekhar, we had Mr. A.P. Samal, then we had Mr. Bhubaneswar and Mr. Santa Kumar. Please feel free.
Just wanted to follow up on Professor Chandrasekhar argument. So if you have more area under forest, you get a certain additional share of the central tax revenue. There's been discussion that states that do more on renewable energy should be incentivized as But then, as you rightly pointed out, states which do not have the capacity to do that will get penalized. So it's actually a different approach that you're talking about, not incentivizing but compensating.
Absolutely.
Do
So
you think
incentivizing should also include compensation.
I wonder if it's possible to just continue that train of thought to something that might, is there any advantage, natural advantage in these regions or states where that same incentivizing argument might hold or
I
too much to
think my
expect?
sense is that it can be left to the market for the technological opportunities to emerge. But we should accept that now creating one unit and emission through multiple means is worth for incentives. In that sense, if a state or a decide not to use something, or if the state is forced not to use something, that should also become an eligible one for incentive. So I think it's more of a question of definition. I think there was some discussion on the compensation issue in the last finance commission, am I right?
Yes, in fact, see, what finance commission does, but in the TOR, there was a lot of description about this climate change and environment, all those things. But then when the finance commission goes to the formula, they always use a non-controversial indicator. And you were talking about this climate change compensation or say renewable energy. That came in, I think, 12th finance commission, and that was a grant as well. That was not a formula as well. But 12th, 13th and 14th finance commission have used it, say, in the interstate transfer as a percentage, first coverage. But I think, in fact, today I was talking to the finance department people that the state governments should, all state governments submit a memorandum to the finance commission, and they should explicitly mention that we should go beyond this forest cover, particularly if you want to achieve energy transition. See, at even as a COP, everywhere actually we are discussing that we have to achieve energy transition and increase the renewable energy production. But then, if you don't include that in the finance commission, then states don't really respond. Okay? And if you look at all the policies of state governments in India, if there is a characteristic policy, then all the state governments respond. Other they don't. So we need to really incentivize. Okay? And when you don't give money, that also becomes penalty ultimately. Okay? So when you start incentivizing, states immediately respond to this. So, and I think in fact immediately, if you look at the impact of finance commission transfers, forest covers have actually gone up. People may say that no, they are fudging the data. No, it is for a survey of India data. Okay? So no one is, so that I think we need to really seriously think, but we have to think about the indicator. Finance commission never uses a controversial indicator. The indicators developed by researchers are not accepted as financials. It has to be a government published data. So if you can suggest that this data you can use, then they will accept it.
All depends who the researcher is.
Second point on the carbon market. I think that recent notification of creating the India carbon market. Now this whole thing, I think this is one motivator which can also give the benefit to the states depending on, I think this is the good example for this. But the problem even in the carbon market creation is that it is governed by the Bureau of Energy Efficiency is the custodian of the market. Now that market is only determined basically what they are doing, they are transferring the PAT mechanism to the carbon credit. They are using that emission, that energy reduction that is happening through PAT program, multiplying with the emission factor and creating the carbon credit. Now question is whether how inclusive that mechanism is, because if this can be a pure carbon credit basis because you are doing additional work like for Odisha, if the state can create a carbon market and then the states, interstate carbon market can be traded. Instead of industry having the carbon credits and trading, if the state as a whole can be the custodian of their state carbon market and trade among the states, I think perhaps this could be one way forward, but I don't know whether that provision is it's still not yet there. It's not yet there, it is mostly into the industry specific thing. And the second, another opportunity has also come, I think that the state should explore is the green credit. Because that is also the natural resource. Because I think I also stated that in the whole transition debate, we cannot forget the natural resources. And this is very unfortunate that in the whole discussion, we are not bringing the benefit that we are getting out of our ocean coastline, we are getting the benefit out of your forest cover, we are getting benefit of wetlands. Odisha is, with the abundant resource of water, the ocean, forest, everything should be credited for. And I think if we can do the valuation of these resources, that can be the strength of the state to negotiate with the rest of the country, that look, we are absorbing this amount of emissions for you and we are maintaining it, and for that the compensation should be given. I think that should be the argument made.
These kinds of instruments should be developed. I think
I will just add here, one is with the, regarding the carbon credit by Bureau of Energy Efficiency. I am an impaneled accredited energy auditor. What has happened? There are two schemes. One is CR scheme, compliant emission reduction target, that is the certified emission reduction target. Another is the VR, voluntary emission reduction target. In the voluntary emission, those provisions are there. And in fact, regarding the state, intra-state provision, I will just like to address here. The state government, we had a very good meeting with all the CGP owners, captive power plant owners, GRIDCO, OPTCL, in which a debate was, brainstorming has been done, consultation has been worked out for creation of an intrastate power exchange or energy exchange, where all this, because this transition which Indian carbon market will take another 2 to 3 years time, but international carbon market is working very fine. So we are trying to create an exchange so that all the green energy certificates and carbon credit certificates and energy saving certificate will be traded intrastate, so that our industries, the power is going to Delhi, is coming back. So 2 times of transmission charges are being paid in terms of POC charges. So those transactions will not happen. The industry will get a benefit of around 500 crores, and the state also will be benefited. So intrastate energy exchange is under pipeline. Perhaps it will come soon. If it will come soon, definitely we shall appreciate if this thing, a creation of intrastate exchange can be told to finance commissions or NITI Aayog. Definitely it will create a good market.
Lady of the, can I please, lady of the
So my question is to Shanta. Mentioned about the willingness to pay, and also what sir told about the green credits. Now, be it the willingness to pay or green credits, especially in a country like India, where most of the people are, like, not most, but many of the people are below the poverty line, and they are not actually aware of the natural resources and what issues are going on, or how to give them an economic value. So how do we actually address this issue of compensation or this willingness to pay, or even if the green credits program have been implemented very recently, not implemented, it has been proposed very recently in India, but the implementation is a major issue because of identifying the stakeholders and the beneficiaries who will be involved in the willingness to pay or accept scheme.
so I fully agree with you. Standing willingness to pay by people. That's possible, because we don't have to really use the stated preference method. There are revealed preference methods we can try. For example, what about the domestic consumers? Now, for example, how much domestic consumers are willing to pay for their electricity consumption? We all say that no, 24-hour electricity is important. I think that's a kind of statement of purpose or statement of intention. But are we really matching that with the willingness to pay? What is our sort of behavioral pattern when there is a change in the price? For example, politicians in almost all the states will try to reduce the electricity price, and they don't want to increase the price during the election year. And that's a clear indication where does it stand. So in that sense, there are indirect ways of catching. So my point is that it's not a question of understanding one person's willingness to pay and compensating that. But here we are talking about a large, at the aggregate level, we can get inferences of the willingness to pay through indirect methods. And similarly,
can I just say?
Yes.
Yes. And actually, Mr. Swami what I told, presently carbon trading policy, we are running with bad sales since 2011. At present, Odisha have 99 number of designated consumers, about 8 sectors. And our bad sales have achieved $14 million oil equivalent in the up to third cycle, as against target of $8 million of oil equivalent. DST Odisha. And that more to say, whatever the MSME sectors or industries have achieved the EC certificate, energy consumer certificates, by minimizing the consumption. specific consumption per ton of production. Those will be converted to carbon trading as carbon, so they can sell it outside. Earlier there was no provision and they are being promoted that they will become benefited by selling in carbon market. Those will come as a new policy.
No, that is the India carbon market policy, so which you can sell it. But the question is that market has to be found first. So that is yet to be done.
It is going on, it is going on. It is going on. Second thing what Madam actually said, Madam said common people, actually what they do, common people do not understand anything. They follow the officers or idols. What others, what government is doing, or what we are doing. Just they simply follow. They do not want to understand why it is required. What is the coal based coal storage of our country? No one can know. They simply follow. They and follow what the seniors are doing. So we should be the example for that. Like LED bulb evolution. What central government did. This LED bulb was about 180 rupees or 200 rupees. After it came down to rupees 60 or 70. Government started providing LED bulbs free of charge. So it became a tendency for the people to purchase LED bulbs. They are not going to purchase incandescent lamp at rupees 10. So did they know? But they followed it. What government did. So we should accordingly frame policies so that common people automatically will abide by the policies. Or use the material.
Okay, since Professor Shantanu was the last speaker, I think we all are starting with this discussion. It will be very unfair if I don't go back to Dr. Chandrasekhar because he wanted some.
I will ask Dr. Chandrasekhar.
Yeah. He wanted to discuss something over 2 minutes. Okay, so we'll start with Professor Grover's comments on you.
I have 2 questions. You said that agricultural sector in India consumes 18% and this percentage is globally highest. Is it real consumption or is it consumption by farmhouses which are set up on agricultural land and the lavish lifestyle which is practiced there? Do we have any information on these issues or no?
18% includes everything. So basically, we are having feeders that feeds agricultural goods. So most of the locations we are having a separate feed. Industrial consumers and the domestic consumers and agricultural consumers. So whatever the 18% that is counted, that includes everything, including the farmhouse and everything.
So there are some issues there that we do not know perhaps fully and we have to understand more about it.
Yes, that is.
The second question is you covered all aspects of integration, but you didn't touch upon reactive power. Renewables don't have reactive power and that is also an issue. Any thoughts on that?
No, actually I have covered, sir. Somehow I think it has somehow it has. So in fact I did not cover it directly as a reactive power, rather I mentioned it as a voltage regulation issue.
Voltage regulation results from that. Okay, you are saying.
Yeah. So basically so far we are facing the under voltage issue. Once these renewable energy sources are getting integrated, instead of facing low voltage, we started facing the high voltage. So all this equipment and the stress on the equipment installation, everything will go on increase. So as a whole, for example, this AC air condition that is running, it is expected to run at let us say 400 RPM or 500 RPM. The fans they are expected to run at 300 RPM, 400 RPM. The moment the voltage increases, they started running at higher speeds than what they are supposed to run at. So that is going to put wear and tear. More wear and tear will be there, and the life of the equipment is going to decrease. And that is going to be a very big problem for sensitive equipment like chemical plants, what we are talking about. They are supposed to run at a certain speed. So beyond that, if it is running, what are the chemical composition that what we are expecting?
Yes.
That is going to get damaged. And in addition to that, with the same kind of power supply we are feeding hospitals, so to say, our ECR machines, they are going to feel the stress. So unnecessary spikes we may face. So that is ill effect of this integration of renewable sources, and that increase in the voltages, and that increase and decrease in the voltages need to be compensated by supplying the reactive powers or absorbing the reactive powers.
You wanted to add something more.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to Mr. point over the 18% thing. Well, I'm Ashok Srinivas from Prayas Energy Group, policy group. The issue with the 18% number, if I'm not mistaken, comes from what the distribution utilities report to the Central Electricity Authority, which the Central Electricity Authority puts. Point is that most of the agricultural electricity consumers are not meeting. So this is more a figure that is submitted by distribution utilities after subtracting everything else and what they feel is the agricultural consumption. And in Maharashtra, at least, we have done detailed studies and few other states also. And essentially, this is often an overstated number. It includes a lot of the commercial losses and other losses that they have elsewhere, and including the technical losses which are higher than the normative limit that they're supposed to have. It's a kind of report under agriculture, because agriculture, the other flip side of the problem is agriculture is subsidized in most states. So the more agriculture consumption you report, the more subsidy you get from the government. So there's also an incentive to over-report agriculture. So the combination of these multiple factors that result in this very high number in of agriculture.
And to complement that, sir, so as I have mentioned, most of the cases, most of the states, it is subsidized, in many cases it is free. Some states, if you see that agricultural loads. Yes. And there is a behavioral problems also there. So for example, there are the cases, I can quote the state also, there is state that is giving 24 hours electricity. So in the name of giving or encouraging the farmers, they are providing free electricity to the agriculture sector. So in those states, some states the electric motors will be running all through the day. And the groundwaters are getting
this is leading to desalination problems. So many things are happening.
Yes, that is happening. In fact, the farmers have protested that we don't want 24 hours electricity. So you limit it to 6 hours or 8 hours. So there are multiple reasons that has accounted for that 18%.
Yeah,
So I think let us first, Shanta Kumar, I have one question more for Chandrasekhar. You said technical losses minimum, maybe we can bring it down to 12% or so, but not below that. Certain countries, Singapore is one example, which have only 5% technical losses, and other 6-7% are quite common in some cases. Why did you say 12%? Why can't you bring it as the other countries have?
7%, in fact, I was thinking to say 7%, that is the most optimistic value, 7%. Even if you say that, in the technical, we start, when we are teaching, you see the design, when you are talking about the design aspects, the target should be 7%. And at the max, because of the losses, the equipment losses are there, the efficiency of transmission line is there, and what kind of material that what we are going to use in the transformer, in the transmission line. Contractors, the transformers, all that energy loss is going to get added. So that comes, ideally speaking, it should be around 7%. That is the ideal case. And in Indian constraint, we can go up to 12%. And beyond that, whatever that is there, it is commercial loss. So, yeah, our system, our distribution systems, transformers we are talking about, they have to be pulled down. And the transformers itself, they are going to have the losses. And some leakage losses will be there. So all these things together.
Overloading.
The transformers sometimes are not well maintained, so all those things. Okay, I think, sorry, I interrupted you.
So, I have a question regarding that the coal use. I think this is very coal use in a power generation. So, I have two questions. Question number one is on what is your NTPC's role in terms of IGCC, the coal gasification, because that is one kind of technology long existing in the system, but never picked up in that way. So, what is the take on that? And the second is that I saw, because NTPC is the first promoter, I think perhaps in Asia, about the air-cooled system. So that is also kind of has some kind of a damping effect on the overall thermal efficiency, if I am not very wrong. So, so in that case, how you are actually, because when you are doing this kind of cost analysis and of the systems optimization based on the level. So everything matters actually when the whole system gets optimized. So every small thing, even the FGD addition is also having an impact on the overall thermal efficiency. So how you are, efficiency, how you are managing that between bringing this kind of technology, maintaining the efficiency and the kind of the cost of power. So if you can
First, I'll answer your IGCC question. We tried IGCC long back, but we stopped that program because of two reasons. One is this technology, what you are referring is was developed in USA, in Australia, foreign countries where the ask content is about 5 to 7%. What is our core ask content levels? 40%, sometimes it is 50%, 60%. So that kind of ask, and second is our ask is abrasive, more abrasive than outside they have sulfur content high, but our silica content is high. So that technology will not work there. We tried, of course tried, but the life became maybe less than a year or so. So it is not economic. So we stopped because we cannot import coal and use for IGCC. So we have to use our coal.
Just one question.
Yeah.
In your slide, I am going to focus on energy efficiency measures.
Let us finish.
Okay.
Yeah. Now your second question was the airport condensers. Airport condensers, I mean you are asking the right question to right person because I am the designer of SSC, the North Promoter, the first project in India having a supercritical unit, 660 megawatt unit having an airport condenser. Whenever we design a power plant, you have to design total system, not individual components. When North Pura wanted a power plant, there your coal is cheap. Coal is very cheap, and you do not have water. The river there is a tributary of the Damodar river. You get as a perennial, not a perennial source. It's only 3 months during the monsoon season only water will be available.
After that almost dry.
It is dry. It is dry. Almost it is dry. So what is the option? Let us not have a power plant here. You cannot have a power plant where there is water is available for 3 months. You have to have 12 months Or the option was, other option was have it somewhere in Rajasthan or on the coastal side to transport the coal. So this is more economical. The other one is having SCC airport condenser where slightly the efficiency will reduce definitely. We estimate in the order of 3% to 4% in overall scenario on heat rate content, 3% about reduction. At the same time, you save 85% of water. So I believe,
see the entire system.
I believe water is more precious than having slightly higher carbon dioxide. If you don't have water, then you don't have agriculture, you don't have life even. So that optimization you have to do. Same thing is with your LCD. LCD also, if you don't have LCD as a norm, you have LCD, you cannot have it. Otherwise you will have acid rains and all those other things will come. You have to add cost and of course.
Okay, so we have 3 more questions. Please don't be greedy. Just because we have one speaker less does not mean that we will exhaust all the energy and time for this. I have to run away. So we have 3 questions.
It's okay, we will talk personally.
Do you know personal or talk?
No, just I want to say that we are as NTPC in the prime organization. Can't you take up energy efficiency measures among public? Can you have a scheme like that to incentivize the equipments to the public? Because we are also getting something from the people, as well as doing something from the environment. Why you want to do such a scheme for incentivizing the star-rated appliances like that?
Incentivizing whom?
Public people.
Subsidizing the power.
That incentive the star-rating appliances.
No, we are not selling appliances.
You can do it, no? You can.
How will you do that? How will do, I don't understand.
As you are doing something for the environment, like that.
That we are doing through CSR, whatever we have done, we are doing through CSR.
Only CSR
And-
also.
Yes, CSR, then we are spending on R&D.
I will say that some more money for education awareness program.
Awareness program and also.
That you are already doing. We spend much more than what is the mandated under CSR. We do much more. For example, you might take this Portland lighting program. That was done by EPC, that is beyond CSR funding. We spend about 14 crores for lighting this to LED lighting of all the Puri. So that's already
Shanta Kumar, yeah.
Actually, I had a question to Professor Dover and Mr. Naik. You have talked about the usefulness of nuclear as part of the energy transition. But when you are looking at the current situation, what are the real constraints in enhancing investment in nuclear energy in India? Because there is a growing demand, market require energy, and you have the technology, but what is really preventing the sort of expansion of nuclear energy in India?
Yes, good question. Till 2008, constraint was non-availability of uranium. From domestic sources, domestically we don't have uranium, and it was not possible to import uranium. And this changed after very intense dialogue with the international community in 2008, and subsequently only we are able to import uranium. And then there were issues related to liability legislation, civil nuclear liability. That act was enacted by Parliament in 2010, ruled in 2011, and after that these rules were notified. Then there were issues with regard to implementation of liability legislation because of insurance issues. By the time all those issues were sorted out, it was 2015. 2015, those of you who have been following up this issue will recall that detailed statement was made by Sushma Swaraj in Parliament in the form of frequently asked questions to allay the fears of all the suppliers. After that, only really we started 700 megawatt PSWR program, and now the current situation is first 700 megawatt PSWR in Katrapar has been declared commercial in the month of June or July last year. Second one has become critical, likely to be made commercial by April, I think. And one more unit of Rajasthan, 700 megawatt, will come up towards the end of this year. One more 700 megawatt later. And after that, 12 units of 700 megawatt have at various stages of construction or implementation, and they will come one by one. So now is the time for us. This whole program was conceived. All this program will be over by 2030 to plan program beyond that. So those whatever hiccups were there so far, they are over now, and we are the technology which has been developed. We are moving ahead.
Thank you.
So the question is to बगल में बैठो बाहर
Fine.
It is solar, rooftop solar energy. And when we were preparing the policy by Abuthi, so I came to know this, the noise that is created by the rooftop solar energy. So there actually we were thinking, what would be your proposal? Say, the solution that we are providing to this policy is that instead of encouraging every individual to have a rooftop solar energy, now in every panchayat, actually let us form, like now NABARD does farmer producer organizations. Similarly, we can have solar energy producer organization in every panchayat. And that actually, so that creates actually less disturbances in the solar. And actually in the morning actually when I was speaking, I was telling that how we can involve panchayat raj institution and urban local bodies to promote this. And now PRIs and AULBs get money directly from the government of India, even through finance commission money comes to the panchayat. So yeah, I wanted your opinion on this, smaller grids versus smaller rooftop solar energy plants versus bigger, or you want like much bigger, like say Hirakud Dam, I think the state government is proposing to have a floating solar park. But I again came to know that it is quite expensive also. So your thoughts?
Yeah, in fact, there are 2 points. The first one is individual consumers. As individual consumers and domestic consumers, we can have the PV plants on our roof. What we say is a rooftop PVs. And the other one, the panchayat based PV system. That's what we call it, community based grids or community based. Now, if it comes the policies, I'm talking about the energy policy, the electrical grid code, so to say. Grid code, as on today, not only in our country, many countries across the world, they will not allow you to go for supplying the reactive powers. Means you are not allowed to alter or control the voltage. That's what you are getting at your point. However, you are allowed to give certain amount of the power to the grid, real power. That's what we consume in general. And different states have different caps. Let us say I am having 5 kilowatts of load in my home, then there is a cap, 80%, 50%, 60% of my maximum connected load is allowed to connect. From the state to state, it is varying. Again, state is going to have their own policy. So, in such case, if that cap is there, it is because everybody is connected their rooftop PVs to the grid and everybody is trying to inject. So, in general, everybody, for a certain period, everybody wants the power, and for a certain period, everybody do not want the power. Something to say like this. During the summer season, at the mid of the day, we wanted to have the maximum consumption. We are going to turn off our ACs. During the winter season or during the night, generally consumption is going to go down, or in the evening, so to say. So in that case, if you see everybody is injecting the power, the grid also having a limited capacity to absorb. So there is a restriction there. Again, the grid is also having a limited capacity to supply the load. So there is a restriction. And beyond this, if you are trying to inject or absorb the power, whatever the power flow that is happening through the power electronic converters. So whenever these power electronic converters are there, all this noise, so to say, will get injected into the system. And because of that, earlier it was discouraged, and thereafter we are having the power electronic converters as controls which can solve the problem. But even today, they are little on the higher cost-wise. If you see, they are on the higher side, but the solutions are there available. And if you see that, we can make it automatic. So if it is automatic, and we need not to discriminate among the consumers, and it is always good to have or encourage everybody to go for rooftop PVs. If such kind of expenditure we cannot make, but if we can form a community, let us say in village, the other speaker was talking about skilling the people, right? So we can find few people and they can take care of the rooftop PV for that particular location. So it is basically community-based PV systems or the microgrids. And when it comes to the higher scale, as you mentioned that megawatt scale, hundreds of megawatts or thousands of megawatt scale, yes, that is also required. But the problems that what we face in rooftop PV are more or less similar to the problem that what we face in the community-based PV systems. However, the challenge is that what we face in the utility scale PV systems, solar parks, which are having the capacities of thousands of megawatts, just like our thermal plants, 1000 megawatts, 2000 megawatts, even 3000 megawatts, the plants are coming. So in such cases, the challenges that what we face are completely different, and we need technological advance. And more technologies need to be developed to handle the problem that what we face in the utility scale PV systems.
Okay, so with this I formally thank all the 4 panelists for great food for thought and for the extended thought-provoking discussions. Please feel free to carry forward the discussion wherever you want to go, and I hope you had a meaningful day today, and let's continue with the same vigor tomorrow morning. Thank you so much.
And dinner will be start at the same place, 7:30 onwards. You can explore our campus and yes, so please visit our campus. Come back for dinner at 7:30. And yes, people who are traveled, please give your boarding passes for our official purpose. Mr. Nabil is collecting all the boarding passes. So